Hello, hello. Can you hear me?
Yep. Can you hear me?
Yes. All right. Perfect. How are you this evening?
I'm good. Just kind of got back from vacation yesterday and feeling back in the swing of things.
Yeah. It's always nice to have a short week.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. So where do we sit for this session? Did you get a chance to look a little bit at some of the tests?
I do, and I think I've got some stuff ready for you to look at. I also want to let you know before I start recording everything is that I hooked up with Andrew. Good.
Oh, cool. How's he doing?
Well, I reached out to him, found him on LinkedIn, and just sent him a message saying that I knew you and that I was working with you on the mentorship program. And literally like 10 minutes ago, he responded. And he was like, "Oh, that's really cool. How'd you get into it? How did I know you? That any friend of yours was a friend of mine." And I thought that was great. Let's see what else. And he said he wasn't familiar with the mentorship program and wanted to know more about it. I haven't had a chance to respond to him yet because I just wanted to make sure everything was ready for the meeting. So,
That's lovely, though.
does he work with you guys?
He worked with me a couple years ago, and then he actually chose to move on because we were kind of on a hard team to be on. We were kind of, him and I were the whole enterprise product at the time. And it was just a lot of work for two people, and I think we both burned ourselves out a little bit on it. So
He doesn't work for NPM anymore?
He doesn't, no.
Okay. All right.
He made a very good impression on me, and I knew he was in Atlanta area.
Yeah. It's a good area. I always joke about, Atlanta being a good place to work and live compared to California, because I used to work for Apple out in California. Is that Atlanta's got two things going for it. Number one, we can afford to live here, and we have SEC football. So it's the most important.
My girlfriend, I've been having a little bit of wanderlust lately. My girlfriend and I have been talking about it. I've been thinking maybe East Coast, though, maybe eventually. We'll see.
Yeah, come to Atlanta. You'll love it. So, all right, I'm going to share my screen so we can get going. All right, so you can see my screen, right?
Yep.
All right, couple of things to go through, and I've got them all written down. I'll just start with, let me move my browser window over here. So I guess I can close this window out. On Mentorship Diary, I haven't submitted this yet, but what I've done is, this is the write-up of our second meeting. I included images in here. I've got the video uploaded on here. So it's in my, I don't know, what do you call this? My playlist. Let me see if I can go backwards. Let me see how. I'm not a YouTube expert yet. All right, so playlist. So I have my NodeJS Mentorship playlist. Let me stop this so it doesn't play. But this is, right here is our second meeting. So these are all the videos that we've got so far. So got that in, got the thing about doing my first PR. My PR got rejected. It got closed. And then talks about writing about this. And I'm going to include my stories in here. So I will submit this after we finish tonight so that we have it all in. Actually, I can go ahead and actually do that right now. So that's in. So that's one thing. The other thing, the stories. We've gotten a lot of good feedback on the stories from, well, I guess 2 weeks ago now. But this is the one that I did right here to go in the Node.js collection. Doesn't get evidently a lot of readership, so I've only got 550 views on it. But then this one that I did, that I submitted into Free Code Camp, has literally just gone viral. I mean, it's just like, it's like
amazing.
surreal. And I got
Yeah.
13,000 views on it in less than 2 weeks. I mean, it's just surreal. 399 people have clapped for it, which is a thing. It's kind of like a like on, but they call it claps on Medium. I mean, so it's just been huge on that. My Twitter account has gotten, you know, like every single moment I get, like, you know, at least 10 to 12 times a day, I get new updates on Twitter where somebody has taken the tweet about that article and retweeted it. And it just, and it's so like other people will then retweet that again. And it's just like incredible. So you can see how it's got, you know, that many, you know, views in such a short time.
This definitely inspired the mentorship group as well, because I think we're going to try to rate a post once we're done this trial process to kind of speak to why we were doing it and how it went. So I think this is really cool to see.
Yeah, and also I've gotten a couple of people that have just tweeted me directly saying that they've signed up to be a mentee in the program, which is great because then it's generating interest from people that are signing up. You know, people that like went out and immediately signed up and like in 30 minutes they didn't get assigned a mentor and they're like, wait, how long is this going to take? I'm like, well, it's going to take a little bit longer than 30 minutes, you know, before you get into the program. You know, so, but I think it's great because so hopefully they've got a lot of people that just recently signed up on that. So that's the mentorship diary and the videos. So that got that. Let me move all of this out of the way because the other thing, eventually we're going to come back over here because I started working on like my first test and doing that. And my goal is to finish that up. So
Cool.
the first thing is on my first PR that I did. Let me back up so you can see everything that I have done in here. Hopefully it doesn't run out. Yeah, it runs out. Bummer. Well, let's see if I can circle back through. What I did was I squashed my commits down the previous two, squashed them down into one. And then I added in a new commit, one that was a little bit more descriptive than what we had before. And then it tells it that it wasn't writing a comment on every test, which is what one of the reviewers posted out. So I just said that it was just comments in this particular file. So I met that feedback. And then the period at the end of the sentence, which I thought was funny, that that was one of the feedbacks. So I put a period in there. So I've got it. I pushed that up. I did a git pull. I checked out, I did a pull from the upstream. So from Node, and then let's see, I checked out my directory. I merged master into my directory. I pushed all of the changes up to my repo. I have not done the pull request yet. So I figured we could go ahead and submit that so that we have that going. And my cat's walking across the stage here. So sorry about that. And so we can do that. And then I started working on writing my first test. And I have that in the other file. So that was the other thing that I have. So I have those things listed. And the last thing at the end of the day, we need to talk about what feedback to give to the committee as they go from beta to production, I guess.
That sounds great.
do you want to start with doing the pull requests?
Yeah, let's start with doing the pull request and take a quick look here.
Move my browser back over here. All right. All right, so I am on the Node.js, and I'm just going to create a new pull request, right?
Oh, yeah, I'm just looking here. Oh, do you know what? I'm just reading this here. It does look like someone landed your pull request but addressed the nits themselves, which sometimes happens.
Okay, I was wondering about that because
let me share it with you here. 1 second. So this is something that happens sometimes on the project is if someone's made a contribution to Node and if someone's made a contribution to Node and the nits are kind of pretty minor, sometimes the person landing the pull request will literally just affix a couple of the nits before landing them. So basically, worth mentioning, there's actually a tool that the core Node maintainers use for landing pull requests. Let me find it here for you. Just sifting through docs, sorry. Here it is. It's called Node Core Utilities. I don't know if I had you install this or not. So once you're kind of one of the contributors to Node, you'll install on your computer this tool, which I just sent through Slack, called Node Core Utilities.
Okay. And
this actually this can be used to rewrite the pull request and do a little bit of work on it while you're landing it. So I think what probably happened is Anna, who's one of the contributors, saw that your pull request was so close to appropriate that they were just perfectly fine with landing it the way it was. And then let me find where it actually landed in the Node project for you so you can show that off. 1 second here. You're gonna be in the commit history, but it's gonna look like Anna landed it for you. I'm finding that.
And also, I got a feedback about my email not being correct.
Yeah, so that one is just a git config setting, I believe.
I went through. Let's see. What is it? Git config global. What is it? Git config. What is it to list out everything?
It is, let me take a look here. I think you just go git config and it should list it out. Is that right? No.
There, git config -- list.
Okay, there we go.
It has in there my email address.
Oh, I think the issue is that the name, let me take a look at mine. It was a -- list.
Yep.
One moment here. I think that's all it is. Oh no, that's odd. Yeah, it looks like your email's fine, doesn't it? And that is the email you have configured for GitHub?
Yes. Yeah, because if you go to, I'll pull this up real quick, GitHub, and go to my account, and go over here to settings, to emails, and here's my email address that's in my account. It's actually verified, so I don't have a little button to verify because I've already verified it before.
Let's take a look here.
And I didn't know if, because I also have maybe on like locals and whatnot, my work address email got put in there because we use Bitbucket at work, and I think maybe at one point it got set to my work email address, but
I don't think that should matter. I think you know what I think the problem is? I think I don't have user.name set on my computer. I only have user.email set. And I think it might be that if you have user.name set, GitHub might prefer that over email.
Oh, so do I need to set user.name to name and email?
I think if you set user.name to your GitHub username, it might do the right thing. Or if you just unset your user.name, I think GitHub would be clever enough to start doing the right thing.
All right. Well,
that's
okay.
my guess.
Cool. Then I'm not going to worry about that.
Yeah, I don't think it's a huge issue. The thing you might want to consider in the future, which not that many people have done, is setting up GPG signing. That's more important. Yeah, we brought that up before. It's not the end of the world sort of thing, but then the nice thing is you'll get a nice little green check before all your commits. And I think it would at that point would start using the right username on GitHub as well, because GitHub would see your GPG information and line it up and say, oh, this must be Jennifer who's trying to do the commit. Okay. So I'm going to find where this was actually landed. So what happens? So actually, this might be worth showing. If we open up your 22424 pull request.
Okay, I got it on the screen.
If you go to the conversation, when Adelax landed it, if you go down to the very bottom, she will have put the ID for landing it, the D8EF981. So if you click that, so they rewrote the commit message for you so they took care of that in it. They just rewrote the commit message. And then all of these reviewed by, that's added in automatically by that Node Core Utils tool. So it's not that Adelax spent 20 minutes writing this commit message. This was actually all done by a tool. Mm-hmm. And all commits to master are landed using this tool. So it basically just does a little bit of a rewrite, smushes everything together. It looks like the nits were taken care of in that process for you. So there you have it. So you do in fact have your commit landed. It wasn't actually closed. It was committed along with Adelax there.
Okay, excellent. Bookmark that so I can put a picture in on our next diary entry. Excellent. So it's official. Yay! Crowd.
Yeah, that's officially in the code base. If we open up the code base right now, we'd see it.
That's awesome. All right.
Cool.
Okay, so now, like they say, taking a paraphrase on what they teach used car salesmen, when's the best time to sell your next car? It's immediately after you sell the first one. So
yeah, I can work on your next pull request.
First commit in. So now we're ready for the next one. So we've got this. So I can come over here to this file. And this is the test FS promises. And what I'm looking for in here is, where's my other, all right, here, let me move this up, is code coverage. These two red lines were what I was trying to target in writing my first test. Was if you tried to create a buffer that had nothing in it, it would return that the bytes read were, 0, and then returns also the buffer itself. And then it basically returns an error message if there is, if the buffer is empty and you can't write to the file. So that's what I'm trying to target in writing my first test. Okay. All right. So what I did was I went over here and in the file, and I did a couple of things. Is where's my code? I have comments. All right. Couple of things that I started doing on it was. And I haven't saved any of this, so I just started working on it to make sure that it was right, was I just set up a empty constant. I mean, I'm not an empty constant, a constant that has, my buffer that's basically empty. If you try to do it without this, you're going to get an error message because it requires a parameter. So I ended up having to make it an empty string that puts it in there. And then from that, I get the link. Then I'm doing just a quick and easy test on there to just verify that this length is equal to 0. And in here, I've gone in and shown that this works. Is I went in and, in Node, I just created an empty, this is where I tried it first and then ended up doing it with an empty string. And then I checked the length, and the length is definitely 0. So I know that will work. So it should hit this test right here to verify that everything is 0 length. Then the next thing that I want to do was it trying to write out to the buffer that we've got that's basically empty. And then it would try to read from it. And this read is where it should basically come back and return the number of bytes that have been written. And let's see, it should return the number of bytes of written, and then it should throw an error message, right?
It makes sense.
So what I got in here was I did a couple things. Is I went through and write it and tried to read it. And basically what I wanted to do is that the number of bytes read is actually equal to my length. And that's what I'm trying to hit here, so that goes up. Okay. Making a cameo again. And then the next one that I'm worrying about is the trying to do the rejects. So I went through and was trying to follow some of the other tests to see if I can get the same thing, where when it tries to do it, it returns, an error message. And that's where I'm stuck on am I getting both of those things in my test?
Gotcha. So I think where I would start right now is, well, let's see what happens to these. Can we run the one test case for the time being and kind of comment out the rejects test case? What happens if we run the test FS promises with the first assertion, out of curiosity?
All right. So what is the command that I would run to just run that simple test?
So what we can do for just that really simple test is even just /node space test slash no plural, test / parallel slash test -fs -promises.js. And it should run in isolation. So you should be able to run it just like that, and it should run and tell you if the test fails. Okay, so this is an easy one to fix. What I would do is take the whole test case and put it in parentheses, so that we're creating its own scope, just like we were doing for the other bits. And that way, you're not ever colliding on your variable names. And then we can run it and see that actually ran. So if we see the empty len in your strict equal there, just to watch the test fail, you can replace that with, say, or 5 or whatever, yeah. And we should start seeing the test fail when we run it then. So just to prove to ourselves that we're running what we thought we were running. So that's good. So when you're testing individual tests, this can be a good way to do it. There's another way to run it, though, which I'm going to show you because this will be more beneficial for our collecting test coverage. So what you can do is you can go let me actually look up the shorthand here. Because what we want to do is we want to collect coverage to see if we're actually hitting the coverage. So for starters, let's comment out the test. Let's comment out the test as well, because we want to watch the coverage go up once this test runs. So I say we start without any tests that we've added. And then what the command we can run is documented inside the file pull request.markdown. And there's a command for running. There's a command under the test coverage section of that document that tells you how to run tests with coverage. And it's going to look something like what I shared with you, but we're going to edit that to be, instead of CI.js Suite's child process, we're going to call it CI Test Suite's fs-promises.
So change the CI JavaScript suites to CI test suites.
Yeah, I just pasted it for you there in Slack. So it's a make command. Yeah. So, and instead of, the only difference is we're gonna try running just the test suite that is the fs promises bit. And what this is actually going to do is the make coverage takes all of the JavaScript code in the lib directory and rewrites it so that it has test coverage line counters on it. And then it's going to, the next thing that the make file does is it runs the test suite. What CI.js Suites does is limit the test suite to a specific portion of the test suite. And I think I might have the right incantation there. I'm not sure. Let's try that and see what happens. I'm not sure if fs-promises is the right shorthand. I think it might be. So what this is doing is it's rerunning any build that needed to happen to the code base.
Normally, how long does it take to run the test? If you're running just, well, it depends. If you were running, for example, every test, that would take what, an hour?
It varies quite a bit depending on the computer, but I think that without test coverage, it probably takes maybe 15 minutes to run all the JavaScript tests. But once you instrument them for coverage, it takes a couple hours, probably an hour, because they run significantly slower once they're instrumented for test coverage. I'm actually working on a pull request right now that switches how coverage works, though, and they actually should start running within 20 minutes with coverage. So that's something I'm working on that I'm excited about.
That's impressive.
Because right now it's a real Rube Goldberg machine to make the coverage work. I don't think this build will take too long because I don't think our code base has changed too much. Hopefully.
It's chugging along.
Yeah.
And then once it does that, does it automatically create a kind of like the test coverage? Let me see, while that's running, does it create like a coverage file like this?
Exactly. It's gonna create exactly that for you.
Yeah, right. Excellent. And does it, after it finishes running, does it automatically open up a browser window to show you the results, or do you have to open up a file that it creates?
Yeah, we'll have to do that ourselves.
Okay.
What it's actually doing, let me take a quick, what I'm wondering here, the reason it might be taking a long time to build is what branch are we on right now?
Oh, crap. I'm on my make directory branch, my branch that I created initially that I was going to merge in the master with my changes from the comments initially. So it may be this is the first time it's ever run.
Okay. Well, what's the last branch you built against on your computer?
I've only built one branch, and it's make directory.
Oh, we should be fine then. It shouldn't, unless make clean was ever run.
No.
So what's happening? What's actually happening right now? What's going to happen once this runs? Here, I'll screen share for 2 seconds.
Okay. So I'll go ahead and stop sharing.
All that's happening to facilitate the coverage that we're doing is that, let me make a little bit of JavaScript code here. So the way test coverage works is basically, I'm just installing this tool globally that is facilitates coverage, and it's actually the same tool that's being used on Node.js. And what you do is you make a little bit of code like this. So the way test coverage works, or code coverage is probably a better word than test coverage, because it can be used not just for telling what code your test says. It can be used not just for telling what code is exercised by your test, but it can actually be used for performance as well, to see which parts of a code base are executed more than other parts of a code base, so you know which ones you should work on making run faster. So it's actually, it's a methodology that can be used for a few things, but behind the scenes, all that's really happening is, let's see here. There we are. All that's happening, let me see if I can make this look prettier so that it's easier to read. I forget if there's a way to make it look prettier. Oh, I think I imagined that, that setting maybe. Oh, yep, no, I didn't imagine. I think it's compact false. There we go. Okay, so this is a little bit easier to read. All that's happening is every line of code in this foo.js that I wrote. So this is the original foo.js, just a simple if statement with this logical OR here. All that's happening is every single line of code is being rewritten by a parser such that a counter gets incremented as that line of code runs. So this file will actually have the exact same, it's functionally equivalent to the old code. So there's no behavioral difference, but by virtue of running it, you'll actually have populated all this information that tells you how many lines, how each line of code's been executed. And this is essentially how that pretty HTML report is being generated from this. So these counters are incremented. You'll see, I don't have a function in here. Let me make a function. Just gonna make a function too. Oops. Did I make a typo? Oh, I made a typo because I collided on the namespace there. That was a promise. Okay, so what you'll see here is that the function has the function value being incremented. So this says this function's been executed n times. This is a statement counter. So it says this statement has been executed n times. And this is a branch counter. So the branches represent parts of an if statement, like the else is one of its branches. Statements represent essentially every line. So a statement is the console.info is your statement. and the function represents this function B is being executed. So the entire Node JavaScript code base is being turned into this uglier form of code that then once we run the unit tests that you're writing, we'll know if those lines are hit. But that's behind the scenes, that's what's actually doing it right now.
Okay.
So I thought that's kind of giving you an idea of how the sausage is made.
That's perfect. All right, well, mine is still running.
Okay. So maybe twiddle our thumbs for a little bit and then crossfade.
Yeah, exactly. So do you think since I was on that branch that it's taking much longer to run because of that?
I don't think so. I think it's probably that the coverage maybe touched enough files that it should only be touching JavaScript. So I don't know. I don't know why it takes a long time to build the first time you do coverage. It could be that make clean was called at some point in time, and make clean makes it so that you need to rebuild everything. So it might take its sweet time.
Okay.
We can take whereabouts does it look like it is in the process if we take a look at your screen?
Yep, let me share my screen again. All right.
Curious what it's compiling.
Yeah.
So it's compiling V8, which is the one that takes forever, I think. Let's give it a minute or two longer.
All right, let me ask you this. So if mine is going to take forever because it's never been run before, and I don't want us to run out of time, if you run it on your side, on your node, will it go through and run faster? And if so, then maybe we can just transfer my code to your branch so that at least we can have something running. We'll just say which one goes faster.
That sounds good to me, and we can at least show off the behavior. Okay, let's do that, and I'll share my screen then.
Okay.
And we'll see if that actually works. And you can just Slack the code to me, and we'll try it.
I will get it right now.
Okay. Oh, and you'll need to, I think, stop your share too.
Okay. I'll stop sharing. And
Cool.
send it to you, and it's commented out code, so you have to like uncomment it once you put it in.
Cool. Let's take a look here. I think that let's close. I'm on my own branch, but I'm not going to do anything to fiddle with that because it could potentially mean my build takes a long time. So we're going to do it on my branch, and then it will at least show what we're expecting will happen.
Okay.
So I'm going to go to Slack here. I'm not going to update Slack as part of this video. It seems like a waste of time. Okay, so let's get going here. So I'm going to take that snippet of code here.
You can keep it commented out first, right?
Yeah. I'm going to share my screen. And so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that I'm running my code base with coverage. So I'm going to look at the make file. I don't want to clean. So what coverage should do is, let's see what it does here. It's going to remove my output file if there was coverage before. I don't think it's going to completely rebuild everything though. So I don't think it will. I don't think it should take too long. So let's go ahead and run the command make coverage without running clean. And hopefully that doesn't force a complete rebuild of all the things.
And if yours finishes before mine, it'd be a good excuse for me to tell my manager to buy me a faster computer.
Hopefully this is looking, This is looking good.
Yeah.
We're already through the build process. We didn't kick off a full node build. And you'll see that it's actually installing that NYC dependency that I talked about. Kind of can see it coming in right there. And this is I'm really excited that I'm rewriting this bit of the code base right now because test coverage actually is built into Chrome itself, and Chrome's V8 JavaScript engine is what powers Node. And so now that V8 has test coverage built into it, we can start gradually moving towards using that in Node, and it's much, much faster than this kind of rewriting approach that I showed you, which I'm excited about. I wonder what's it up to here. Oh, I think it's okay.
So how long is it going to take you to do the writing that you're working on right now?
I'm hoping to have it landed this week sometime, but then to actually, I think, rework the Node's code base will probably take another few weeks. So I'm starting by doing the foundational work to support it, and then as a second pull request, I'm hoping to rewrite things. I think we're farther along in the build than we were before on your computer. What's kind of neat about the way that V8 is doing test coverage, which is different than the rewriting approach that I was talking about, is that they actually add the test coverage in the bytecode layer. So the way JavaScript works is they take the written JavaScript that we tend to write, and they actually turn it into an intermediate representation, which is kind of like a machine code like the Java JVM runs. That's kind of a compressed form of the code that can then be optimized in other ways. And the test coverage that V8's doing actually counts the lines of code being hit and the functions being hit in that intermediate form, not in the JavaScript form. So end of the day, it turns out it's quite a bit faster.
Nice.
So it looks like this is kind of deciding to do a little bit of building too.
Yeah, well, mine's still chugging along. It's slow on my computer.
Well, this is good. Okay, I think this is actually quite promising.
All right, well, tell me what it's going to do once it finishes up. After it finishes running everything and else like that, does it create a file and you just go open that file up to see what the coverage is?
Yeah, I think it's actually about to finish. But what's basically happening is it moves aside what was, because the Node code base is mostly JavaScript. There's a bit of C in there, but actually a lot of the core stuff is still JavaScript. So what it's actually doing is it's taking all the stuff in your lib folder, which is where the Node's JavaScript code base is stored, and moving it into /_lib. So you'll see something like path.js. This is the original path.js file that your JavaScript code base, that the Node code base had in it. And once it moves it off to the side like that, it takes everything that was in the lib folder and does that same rewriting step that I was showing you. So this probably looks familiar from a few minutes ago. So this is done for all the things we're working on. So like if we look at fs.js, it's been rewritten to have all these coverage counters. So I think it was internal fs promises, I think. Oh, fs, yeah, sorry, promises. So the promises file that we're trying to hit the line of code on has actually been rewritten already to have these counters in it that we were talking about. So what are we doing here? This looks like it's on to the very last build step. So what will happen is that as when we run our code in isolation, it's going to output to a folder called coverage, and it's going to have those HTML files that are published every night on the Node website.
So hopefully it'll finish up faster on your computer. You can see it. Now, after you've run this once, and it's, takes a few minutes or however long it takes to finish running the test, and you put the test, you uncomment out the code and run it again. Does it take the same amount of time the second time to run?
No, it should be a lot faster as soon as we run it this once.
Okay, that's good.
I'm just bringing, let me open up the pull request .markdown here. Just want to make sure I'm rating the test in the right manner. So we configure -- coverage, make coverage. We've done that. And then we're gonna, yeah, there we go. And then so we're running it for a specific suite. So yeah, this should work. Oh, and here we go. It's actually doing the.
Oh, it's building the coverages.
Yeah, yeah. There we go. Okay. So what did we actually hit here? Here the question is, did I actually hit type the right name of thing to run? Yeah. So I'm going to open up the index.html, which looks familiar, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and we did hit. So let's see here. Well, we only hit 60% of promises.js, which I'm actually kind of surprised by.
It's roughly line 213.
Yeah. So let's take a look here. So we're gonna see if this, first of all, let's see if it actually runs the second time faster, as I said. I would hope it does.
So did you uncomment out the code?
I didn't uncomment out the test yet, so I just wanted to see, I kind of wanted to get our baseline here. And I wanted to make sure that actually it's running the part of the suite that I think it's running. So we're just kind of, should be significantly faster the second time. I'm a little surprised that so few of these things got exercised by the tests I wrote, but maybe that's just how things are. So we're gonna, I'll let this run once more. Oh, I see. I think I might see something. I'll let this finish and then I think I didn't need to run it with, I'm suspicious, having looked at how coverage works in the code base. There's a file called ratecoverage.js, which is what actually outputs it, and is called from node.js, I think, which is the main entry point into things, this character. Okay. I'm not convinced that we need to run make coverage a second time. We'll let this finish.
So do you just run the same command but without the make coverage at the end?
I think so. I'm trying to decide. So the way that coverage works is if a global underscore coverage has been set. Oh, yes. So the way it works is if a global underscore coverage has been set, then it will include rate coverage in the main process. And this variable will exist already because I'm going into the weeds here, but basically as soon as you've instrumented your code base for coverage, as we have here, then this coverage variable will be set, at which point this other special module gets brought in called rate coverage. And rate coverage is what actually makes sure that the coverage is output to disk at the end of the day. So this is why I'm very excited to rewrite how coverage works, though, because it takes a painfully long time. And that's what we're kind of bumping into here. I probably should have written what we'll do is we'll let this finish and then we'll try adding our test, and then regardless of whether it's successful or not, we kind of know how to zero in on what we're trying to do.
All right. While that's running, also let me ask you the question on the test. There were two things that I was trying to write tests for. One, that what was read in, the number of bytes that were read in is 0 because it's an empty buffer. And then the other one on there is that it should throw the error message. So doing that, doing it where you create it, check the length to make sure it's 0, that the, so it has in here is if the length is 0, it returns the number of bytes read, which is going to be 0 because length is 0. So you can compare that. And then the other test was the line where it has it throws the error message. And I was trying to do the reject on the test. Am I heading in the right directions to try to capture that?
I think so. The other thing you could even do, I think I think you're right to try to do the reject. What I'm finding interesting too is I think that in reality, aren't you going to, if the buffer.length is 0, so if you've created the empty buffer, right? Mm-hmm. I think the first test case that was shared with me, let me pull this out here. Oh, we'll pull this one out first, actually. I'm just going to put it down here near the bottom.
Okay.
This is really promising. Okay, so okay, so this is testfs promises. I'm just putting your snippet in here. I think that this test, because the buffer's length is 0, would actually trigger the second assertion. Where did I put that file? 1 second here. Test internal fs promises. I think it's actually going to trigger the second line because the buffer comes in. The buffer's length is 0. Buffer is empty, cannot be written. So I actually think that it's, I think it might be this line we execute, and then to execute this line, need a buffer that's non-zero. and then the offset would be one. So I mean, we can try that. Let's try. I think to exercise that first line, we would have a buffer that's like some non-zero length, and then we're going to read from the buffer. So we can go. So we're going to go. Where's the handle? Okay. I think we could go straight to the read of the buffer. So we probably don't even need to do this. We can go, this is kind of just, we'll just make it called buff. And then we can read from buff. So we take the handle. Oh, we need the handle too, though. So we need I would need to look at how the handle behavior actually works. So I think we would, so to hit this line of code, I'd need to read the API a little bit better.
You have to write it out, I think, first,
okay,
and then try to read it.
I understand. Okay.
So you just, you can do a handle.write and then your buffer that you've created.
Okay. Well, we'll go right back to here. But I think that, let me take a look at what this actually does here. I think that we're going to maybe throw an exception on this return. I'm surprised we're not throwing an exception on this return because I think we're hitting the, just execute here. Test fs promises. .js, okay. Oh wait, it's only valid in async. Oh, what did I do wrong here? We need this to be in an async function. Oh yeah.
You need to be inside the do test thing.
Yeah. Here we are. So, and that's because you can't async at the wait at the top level. So what's slightly weird to me about this is the first thing should be, I'm not convinced we're actually exercising the line we think we're executing here, because I think we need to execute the read with the handle is the first one, a buffer is the second one, an offset is the third one, yada, yada, yada.
Okay.
So we just need to figure out how to execute that second form. But let's still show it in action. What we can do, I think, imagine that we did have a handle to read from. I'll need to read the API a bit closer. We don't have too much time left. Let me take a quick look here. I know they have the, oh, here we are. Okay. And there's the read command. Oh, here we are. So it has buffer, offset, length, position, but I think I could have sworn there was also a one that takes handle first. Not quite sure how that, oh, I guess maybe that, I'm not quite sure how that works. How that works differently. Maybe the validate handle. I would need to dig into this code base a bit more.
There, go back up to where my code is.
Yeah.
So 268.
Mm-hmm.
That's where it does the handle.read.
Yeah.
So I think that's.
Oh, I understand. Yeah. Oh, I understand.
Yeah, so I'm writing it out first so that
I
I've
see.
got something that there to read.
That makes sense to me. I gotcha. And then handle.read's actually executing behind the scenes a different function, which is read with the handle as the first argument.
Right.
That makes sense to me. I get it. So then I think that to execute that line of code we're missing, we actually
I think
might
we
do
still
that
need,
and still read 0.
but you don't need to make hello world just empty quotes so that it's empty, that the length is empty. Because see, then the empty length variable isn't going to be 0 if you have hello world in there.
But where I'm confused is that, see, the length is what you want to read from the buffer, and it's the 4th parameter here.
Okay, which we do have is 0, right?
But then where I'm confused is if the buffer.length is 0, it says here we should throw. So I think we want a non-zero buffer length potentially.
Well, the buffer is the second parameter.
Yeah. So I think we want, because there's 2 cases, right? There's I've given you a buffer with 0 in it. And if there's 0 things in the buffer, we throw an exception. There's the second case, if the length of bytes I'm trying to read is 0, then return this instead, which is just the buffer and length 0. So I think there's 2 different cases, but let's take a look. Like I think we can leave it the way it was, and we can. The other neat thing is that if we look at the code coverage we just ran, I don't see, and this is what I was actually kind of hoping, I don't see the FS promises in here. Root internal FS promises. There's not here. So that means actually the first command I ran, where were we? Ta-da, fs-promises. This is right, and the second one I ran was wrong. So the fs promises star.
So fs-promises star is correct?
Is incorrect, and this one I'm running right now is correct. And I'm gonna get, and that's just, I would have to read the test file to remember the specifics, but basically you give it the prefix of the files you want to run. fs-promises might be, fs would run all of the fs suite. So long story short, I've added that test case in, and theoretically it should start, it should give us maybe different coverage of that file once it finishes running. But as we know, it takes 5 or 10 minutes to finish running.
Yeah, that's tough. So, and we're at the end of our hour.
Yeah.
It sucks.
Did yours ever stop building?
No,
or did yours
still going.
Yeah.
Still going. Maybe by the time I wake up in the morning, it'll be finished. So, but what I can do is, before we have we have one last meeting, right?
Yeah, I could even do another meeting this Friday of this week, potentially.
Okay.
If we wanted to, because I'm fine with doing this as 2 parts, if we just want to clip them together, since most of this conversation has been watching stuff build.
All right. Yeah, Friday, if we can do the same 6 p.m. your time, would that?
I'd be into that. I'd be up for that.
Okay, good. For the next couple of months, every weekend, I have to drive up to my mother's house in Athens. So I leave Friday after work, but I will be in Athens in time, ready to set up on my computer on her network, 9 p.m. my time, which would be 6 p.m. your time.
Lovely. What I could even do for Friday would be get the new test coverage code far enough along that we can get instant feedback.
Okay.
That might be nice.
All right. Well, hopefully my build will finish eventually. So once it goes through the painful process of doing it the first time, it'll be good this second time through. And I'll keep
Yeah.
working on my tests and make sure that it works. And then when we get up on Friday, then we can look at them and make sure that it hits that. And we can show
Exactly.
that it does the coverage and everything else like that. And if we've got it where it makes that coverage, then it's just a matter of submitting another pull request so I can have my second pull request done and have that submitted in. And then it's just a matter of finding the next place that needs coverage and moving on from there.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm slightly confused right now is, where are we? Okay. I'm slightly confused by, you might completely be right that I'm just misreading the code base and that handle's magically invoking this read method. You're probably right. It kind of makes sense. But I'm a little confused by why this error wouldn't be throwing right now with a zero length buffer going into it. Like I think that to exercise, do you know why it wouldn't be throwing is maybe this line fires before it can throw. Because you're gonna return before that error throws.
So what we would actually end up needing to do is to call it twice, where we set the first time the length is 0 so that we hit this first one. So we can verify that the bytes read is 0. So that's what we want to test. Then we run it again where we do a read and we set the length to but 0.
I'm 100%. Yeah, I'm 100%. I completely understand now. I was just completely misreading this.
Yeah. So if we run it the second time and we just set the length to, 1, then my buffer.length, because I'm reading in just, quote, quote, that'll be 0 and it should hit that error message. And so then that's where I would need to do a rejects to verify that it's catching that reject, the that it throws.
Cool. I think the only place I was confused is I think you could put any size buffer in and hit this line of code, so you don't really need to start with the 0. I mean, you can start with the 0.
That's true. Yep. That's absolutely true. So I can actually run it as 3 tests. One where I do an empty buffer at 0, something that has hello world in it, or foo bar or something like that, and a 0. And so you're sending it in a buffer with and without content. And then the last one would be to try to catch the error message that it throws when you do the empty one.
All right, let's see here. So I think we are exercising this file because we, look at that. So we did exercise this file, I think, but we didn't successfully exercise this line. No.
Okay. All right.
But work in progress.
Exactly. So by Friday, my goal is to have it so that I've got, I think I'm pointing in the right direction and going in the right direction. It's just a matter of, now that I've got the process of running the tests to check things from tonight, then I can easily get that ready, and then we'll meet up Friday at the same time, 6 p.m.
Same bat time, same bat channel. That sounds great.
Exactly.
And I think we just need to backwards engineer this a bit. We're just not hitting this read, which is interesting to me. Who actually, it seems like you're right that it should probably executed by the handle, but it's a little backwards engineering might be needed here.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I've got more work cut out for me, and I'll have it ready for us on Friday so we can get it.
Yeah.
Get it.
But I sent into Slack this command right here. It takes a kind of a painfully long time, but that will give you the, in your output file, you'll have coverage/index.html afterwards, and you'll get to see it and whether it's run or not from root internal fs. You could also cheat a little bit, and this is kind of to make your life.
Comment out all the other tests.
Well, no, it's not even the tests running slowly. It's that build process running slowly. So you could cheat by going to your lib folder, internal FS, opening up your promises file, and going to the read code, and you have to run build after changing any of the code. So why am I keep clicking the wrong darn thing? You have to run build after you change code in anything. But if we make that, it should be tons faster than running the full build. Let me double check that for you. So what I've done, instead of us actually running the full full shebang of the test coverage generation, I've just edited the lib internal promises.js file. And I've run make, which is going to re-put that into the node binary. Should only take a few, should only take like a few, not nearly as long. Hopefully I'm not making a liar myself. And at that point, instead of running the make test coverage step, you can actually just run the test in isolation like I showed a little bit earlier. Let's just let this finish.
Mine just finished running, but I got an error.
Uh-oh. We might have to dig into that a bit next time.
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. So that was quite a bit faster.
Yeah.
And then what we can do is we can just go node test / parallel / fs fs promises.
fs-promises.js.
Yeah. And look at that, it throws Batman, like because I added just the exception here, Batman, just to prove that I was actually executing that line of code. So you can use that as a way to kind of delve in a little bit. We're never hitting this line of code here, I know for sure. And the feedback loop can be a little bit faster for you if you don't run the full coverage and you just start by adding in. You don't even have to throw an exception. You could put a console.log in or something, but I kind of prefer the exception because it's a hard stop and lets me kind of probe to see, did I even hit this line of code? And it's a lot faster than the coverage stuff.
Okay.
I would recommend that instead of the 10-minute turnaround that we were seeing on the other stuff. What error did you get from when you were running?
Let me share my screen. So here it is, it's finished up, and it just shows up here, error 1, error 2.
Yikes.
It gives this unknown character minus in coverage.
That's not right. Okay, so what we're gonna do for Friday,
New work.
what we're gonna do for Friday is I'm gonna get you on my experimental branch that has none of this crap. Because it will mean that it will make for a much better screen share too, because we won't be spending most of our time fiddling our thumbs. So I'll get a branch over to you sometime early this week, or I guess mid this week, and it will basically, you'll have to run make build on it again like you did and it will take a little time to do that build the first time, but I'll start pulling in that experimental coverage library stuff that I've been working on, which will be almost instantaneous. So and it won't require this build step. So what I would do right now is type make clean probably, because now your code base is going to be kind of in an intermediate state, unfortunately. I think it's make coverage clean. make coverage dash clean maybe. With no spaces, just the word coverage dash clean. Cool. So that should put you back into a kind of a state. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to get you a better branch to work from that will be more exciting on a screen share, because coverage is painful right now. Just, let me share with you. I'll let you be a fly on the wall on what I'm working on, because I think it's really close to landing.
I'll go ahead and stop sharing.
Yeah. I'm working on this right here that I've just pasted for you. And it's basically going to mean that coverage becomes almost instantaneous, which is awesome. All right, I actually need to run though, unfortunately.
Okay, yeah, we've gone over, but it was good. So I'll get, once I get the branch from you, I will get my stuff, try to get my stuff ready so that Friday we'll be able to see if I can get my t-test working for those 2 lines so that we have it.
That sounds perfect, and I'll do a bit of prep so that we have that kind of faster turnaround cycle in the coverage by then.
Okay.
So that gives me a little bit of homework to do, but it shouldn't be too bad. Cool. But feel free to. Yeah, I wouldn't even play around too much more since you're getting build errors on coverage anyways. So, all right.
All right, good deal. Thank you very much, and I will talk to you Friday.
Talk to you Friday. Talk soon. Bye.
All right, bye.